Hi, boys and girls. Mrs. Turner here. I thought I'd sit outside today since it's pretty nice out still. I hope you all enjoyed yesterday. It was a beautiful day. But now let's get on to Chapter 6 of Runaway Ralph. We'll review. Chapter 5, we found out that Garf was upset with the girls because they had kind of taken over after he had found Ralph. And he was sneaking into the craft shop and feeding him and running away really quickly. And Ralph discovered that this is a boy who sings scary songs, but also breaks the rules, and that kind of impressed Ralph. So he's thinking maybe one of these days he's going to talk to him. So, Chapter 6, A Thief in the Craft Shop. At first, the sign over Ralph's cage was the cause of argument. But Aunt Jill, how come Garf is the one who gets to feed the mouse? The campers asked. I want to feed the mouse too. Why can't I feed him? It isn't fair. Nobody else has a mouse. Aunt Jill always gave the same answer. Garf gets to feed the mouse because the mouse is his. He caught it in the butterfly net. This policy inspired some of the campers to go mouse hunting, big game hunting they called it, with butterfly nets. But when no mice were caught, enthusiasm waned, and the campers gradually lost interest. Catso followed someone into the craft shop whenever he could, and whenever he succeeded, Aunt Jill said, somebody had better put that cat out. Usually Lana was the one who picked up Catso and held him with his face over her shoulder as if he were a baby. Poor baby, she crooned, patting Catso on the back as if she were burping an infant. Ralph found the smug look on Catso's face most annoying. And here's a picture of Catso and his face. Garf was happy, but Ralph was not. The boy showed no signs of running away, and now he had abided by the rules. The two were never alone. The bars of Ralph's cage enclosed a very small area, and no matter how fast he ran on his wheel, he remained in the same place. He began to sit motionless for long periods of time while he thought more and more about the freedom he had enjoyed back at the Mountain View Inn. He missed those long corridors and his exciting expeditions in search of food. What he had once called crumbs, scrounging now seemed a test of courage. He even came to admit that he missed his little brothers and sisters and cousin. They were nuisances, but they were livelier than a grumpy hamster. Perhaps he wouldn't mind giving some of the little mice, boy mice of course, short rides on his motorcycle after all. Most of all, Ralph missed that motorcycle. He clutched the wires of his cage and recalled the nights he had sped through the corridor of the old hotel while guests snored behind closed doors, tried to pretend they were the grips on his handlebars. But it was no use. The wires remained what they were, the bars of a small prison, higher but not as long as an economy-sized Kleenex box. Ralph grew listless. So great was his homesickness that the choice tidbits from the dining hall tempted him less and less. He sometimes skipped meals, preferring instead to curl up in a corner under some shredded paper where he dozed, dreaming of dark nights, smooth floor, and speed. Cheer up, said Chum. You'll get used to the cage. Ralph did not answer. He wanted to be alone with his thoughts. Garf, on the other hand, no longer wanted to be alone. He came into the craft shop to tend Ralph while other campers were present, and soon he became interested in the tools in the shop, and finally went to work with some other boys building wooden boats to float in the irrigation ditch. One long morning, Ralph passed the time by watching a girl named Karen. Karen was one of the older campers, a girl, 12 or 13 years old, with long blonde hair, which that morning was all wet. All the older girls washed their hair several times a week. Karen was making an old plastic beach bottle into a piggy bank. She turned it on its side so the handle was on top, glued corks in place for legs, cut a slit under the handle, and painted eyes above the spout, which was now the piggy bank's snout. Ralph noticed that Karen paused from time to time to scratch her left arm. Finally, she set her paintbrush across the top of the paint jar and removed her wristwatch, which she had laid on the shelf beside Ralph's cage. He could hear it tick. She scratched the spot where the watch had been, returned to her painting, and then stopped to scratch again. Karen, let me see your arm, said Aunt Jill, who was showing a boy how to lace together a wallet. Well, it looks to me as if you have poison oak. You had better go see the nurse about it, and be careful not to scratch it. But Aunt Jill, it feels so good to scratch, said Karen. I know, but scratching only spreads the poison oak and makes it worse, said Aunt Jill. Now run along and see the nurse. I'll wash out your paintbrush for you. It's almost time for dinner. When the bell rang for the noon meal and the craft shop was empty, Ralph felt his fur rise along his spine. Sure enough, just as he expected, there was the curious paw of Catso exploring the hole in the screen door. Then the pink nose appeared. Catso must have pushed hard because the rusty screen gave way and the rest of his head appeared. Catso did not stop there. He pushed and wiggled until he got one shoulder and then the other through the hole. Then came Catso's feet, followed by the rest of his beast. Catso was in the craft shop. Where was Sam? Ralph scuttled to the far corner of his cage, where he turned his back to the world and tried to make himself invisible. He heard Catso land lightly on the work table beneath his cage and knew that this time there was no one to snatch him and shove him out the door. Ralph waited, but when nothing happened, he summoned the courage to peek over his shoulder. Catso was calmly washing himself and appeared not to notice. Ralph was not fooled for an instant. He knew Catso was aware of every move he made. Drat that cat, he thought bitterly as his heart beat faster than the tick of the watch on the shelf beside his cage. Catso licked his right paw over and over with great care and began to wash his right ear. That's right, thought Ralph. Take your time. He was worn out from bracing himself for the pounce that did not come. A real war of nerves, he thought, just what that cat wants. He's got me where he wants me, and he knows it. Catso groomed his left paw, currying his fur neatly in the direction of his toes. He used his teeth to pull bits of dried mud from between his paw pads and then began to scrub his left ear. Well, come on, thought Ralph. Get it over. You don't have to be so neat. He would just as soon be knocked off his shelf by this cat with dirty ears as a cat with clean ears. Catso finished washing, looked at Ralph, and glanced away. Ralph, who was familiar with that maneuver, thought, here it comes. But this time Ralph was mistaken. Catso's attention had been caught by the leather strap of the wristwatch hanging over the edge of the shelf. He tapped it with a curious paw and watched it swing back and forth. Ralph's blood chilled as claws appeared from the exploring paw that battered the strap once more. Then the claws hooked the watch strap and dragged the watch down to the work table. How that stupid cat actually thinks the watchman is a tail, thought Ralph in astonishment. Catso sat very still, listening to the watch tick. He batted it experimentally with his paw, but the watch lay as still as any terrified mouse. While Ralph watched in fascination, Catso picked up the watch in his mouth and, with the strap hanging down like a tail, leapt from the table to the floor, where he dropped the watch, batted it about, picked it up again, slipped out through the hole in the screen door. Ralph ventured out of his corner and with shaking paws clung to the wires of his cage to see what happened next. Catso played with the watch a while on the bamboo leaves, but when the cook with the pan of scraps in hand opened the kitchen door, the greedy animal dropped the watch and ran off to be fed. And here's a picture of Catso playing with the watch. The watch slid on the smooth bamboo husk until it came to rest, hidden from sight under some leaves. Talk about close calls, said Chum. Stupid cat, said Ralph in a weak voice. Ralph was dazed by the whole experience, but he noticed Garf leaving the dining hall when the campers began to sing one of their favorite songs. Come into the craft shop, Ralph pleaded silently. True to his promise to Aunt Jill, the boy did not enter the craft shop, but sat alone with his thoughts, twirling idly in a tire suspended from one of the trees and singing his private tune. When you hear the doorbell ringing and see the badge of tin, you'll know the Junior Birdmen have turned their box tops in. B-I-R-D-M-E-N, yay. Before long, Karen, her left arm covered with white lotion, came running into the craft shop with two of her friends. My watch, she cried, sending Ralph scuttling to a corner. It's gone. Somebody must have taken it, said one of her friends, an older girl who was wearing polished English riding boots. I'll bet it was that Garf Jernigan, said a second friend. I'll bet it was too, said the girl in the English riding boots. I saw him leave the dining hall early. She brushed dust from the toe of her boot. Girls who owned English riding boots were proud of them and shined them often. Karen tried to be fair. We don't know it was Garf, and we didn't see him come in here. The girls crowded out through the screen door to meet Aunt Jill, who had paused on her way to the shop to talk to someone. Aunt Jill, they cried. Karen's watch is gone. Aunt Jill, we have a mystery, cried Lana, who had tagged after the older girls in her dirty cowboy boots. She liked the dirt on her boots, which showed she was not a newcomer to camp. Everyone wanted to hear about the missing watch. Campers crowded around Aunt Jill and the three girls. Through the open window, Ralph could hear snatches of conversation. Aunt Jill, I'm sure I left it on the shelf beside the mouse cage. I'm positive. Looked every place. I saw Garth. It was my birthday present. Searched the lodges. He sneaks out of the dining hall. Hasn't even been excused from the table. Now, girls, that was Aunt Jill. Well, I don't care. He acts funny. That cat really has fixed things now, thought Ralph, as the campers gathered on the benches and at the old school desks under the walnut trees. One of the counselors led the singing, and then Aunt Jill stepped up to the platform. Campers, I have some unhappy news today, she began. Karen's watch is missing from the craft shop where she is sure she laid it on a shelf. It was not an expensive watch, but it was a birthday present, and she would very much like to have it back. And here Karen nodded her head vigorously. Aunt Jill went on, we are not going to search the lodges as someone suggested. We are going to let the person who took the watch return it because it is the right thing to do. A lot Catso cares about doing the right thing, thought Ralph. He heard Garth, who was sitting on the last bench, saying angrily to the boy in front of him, what are they looking at me for? Aunt Jill continued, no one needs to know who took the watch. It can be returned to the shelf in the craft shop when no one is looking or to my desk in my office. We are not interested in who took the watch. We want it returned because returning it is the right thing to do. After Aunt Jill's speech, the campers began to sing You Are My Sunshine. Garth slipped away from the rest of the campers and, as Aunt Jill had suggested, sat down by himself behind the clump of bamboo. This afternoon was the first time Ralph had seen him sitting there. You make me happy, sang the campers. They haven't made Garth happy, thought Ralph, wishing that Garth were sitting on the other side of the bamboo near the craft shop, where he might find the watch accidentally. That boy is in real trouble, remarked Chum. Ralph turned in surprise. I thought you were asleep under your cedar shavings, he remarked. That's what I make them think, said Chump. I didn't miss a thing. What is your opinion of the case? Asked Ralph, who knew the right words to use in any such situation from watching so many television programs in the lobby of the Mountain View Inn. I think that boy's in a tight spot, said Chum. Everybody knows he used to come into the craft shop when no one was here, and they know he's still the first person to leave the dining hall, so naturally everyone thinks he took the watch. He obviously can't return the watch because he doesn't know where it is, so of course everyone will think he's keeping it. That's the way I figured it, agreed Ralph. And I can tell you one thing, continued Chum. He's not going to come near the craft shop until that watch is found. What about me? Squeaked Ralph in dismay, thinking of the sign above his cage. Nobody else feeds me. I'll starve. I'll try to toss you an alfalfa pellet once in a while, said Chum. My aim isn't very good, but I should be able to get one into your cage now and then. Enough to keep you going. Going where? Wondered Ralph. No place. What was to become of him when the summer ended and all the campers went home? Would Garth take him away, or would everyone forget him and leave him to starve? He did not want to spend the rest of his life in a cage, and he certainly did not want to be kept alive on a few cast-off alfalfa pellets only to starve at the end of the summer. There was just one thing. Ralph had to escape. The campers finished a rousing chorus of You Are My Sunshine when Ralph's sharp ears caught a sound that had him on his feet in an instant. It was the sound a boy uses to make a toy motorcycle go. It was made softly as if a boy, alone in his thoughts. Garth had found Ralph's motorcycle. Hey, squeaked Ralph at the top of his small voice. That's my motorcycle. Garth stopped pushing the motorcycle across the bamboo leaves, just long enough to make Ralph think he might have heard him. Then, to Ralph's disappointment, he put the motorcycle in the pocket of his jeans and went off towards his lodge for the rest period required of all campers. Ralph was so excited he left the bars of his cage and went for a run on his wheel. Garth spoke his language. He knew how to make the motorcycle go. There was hope after all. All Ralph had to do was explain to Garth. As Ralph thought the matter over, his exercise wheel moved more and more slowly until it came to a stop, and Ralph sat back on his haunches. His plan would not work. Not until Garth was cleared of the theft of the watch. He was never going to come into the craft shop alone. Ralph had agreed to that. Chum was right. Okay, and that's the end of Chapter 6. I'll see you next time.